Okay, so the obvious stuff, pull the plastics off, pull the hood off. See if I can zoom out a little bit. There we go. Got the pipe, you got a 17 on the sensor, get your springs off, get the shield, the ECU, and we've got the servo motor out of the way. So if you unbolt the steering, slide it to the sideways, you can just twist it up and kind of shove it back in there out of the way for now. And then we've got, you know, some hood pieces. So now the hood is going to have to come apart. So we'll break that down. So basically this is just the tear down part. So you just start getting everything out of the way. Now some people will remove the Y pipe. I don't, because I don't want to reseal, get new gaskets for it, and you don't have to. It's a tight fit, but it will fit. And then we'll just work on getting the air box out, crimp the coolant lines, and go from there. Okay, so now I've loosened all the boots on all four of the hose clamps, pulled the idle air control off, and the map sensor out just to keep it safe. Idle air controls just land on the ground. We'll reattach it later. Your boost reference will kind of go on these. Okay, so now I've got the throttle bodies out. You just slide the box forward, pull the throttle bodies out, get them out of the way. These hoses are kind of that hose and that one. And then we've got just a small pair of vice grips on the hoses to keep the antifreeze from going everywhere. So now we'll just finagle this box out of here real carefully. You got to watch if you don't want to peel this off, otherwise you're going to tear it. But if you want to save it, you got to be pretty careful with it to get it peeled off there. Okay, now I'm going to start dismantling the hood. So this back plate has to come off. There's a bunch of screws around it, but you also got to disassemble all the top stuff. Okay, we're also going to set the turbo in now. You need the rubbers, get the bottom rubber in there. And then you have to trim these other rubbers to take off that tab right there. So you just got to whack that off some way or another. So now on the top side, you're going to pull these 4 top screws out. Okay, so that's what that looks like. It slips down into that groove right there. So you just gotta work it up off there and get it apart. Okay, so I got the top cover off, unplugged, and there's 3 screws here, right there and there. Get those, and then the headlight comes off, get it unplugged. And then you got screws right there and there underneath, so you can get that underside plenum completely off. Okay, and then there's underneath these, and there's another screw, so you gotta get these loose enough to get those out to get that plenum. Okay, so now we've got this off, so now we can start putting in the intake up into this, whichever way it goes. Okay, as you put this on, there's a little plastic shim that goes under this and then bolts down. You really got to make sure that these get in correctly. All hoods are going to be a little different from the plastic, so make sure they're seated and sitting right, and then the adjustment on the slots is correct. Okay, back to the turbo. We've got the rubber grommets on there, and then there's a hole right there for a hose clamp to go around this and tie it on. And there's also the rubber that's back there sitting on the frame. In some cases, the bottom, down there, people that have gone over stuff will get bent up, and you got to kind of get a 2x4 or something in there and tap it back down so that everything sits down in there. So now we'll go through and attach the coolant lines. Okay, so now I've got the throttle bodies back in, got that coolant line hooked back up, the other coolant line from the turbo coming over to that one, and the bottom turbo line right down there and zip tied out of the way. And then as I go through, I'll make sure that all this is cleared so it's not going to rub and cut or any of that shit. Okay, we're putting the charge box in, so you keep the throttle bodies pushed down, and then it'll just drop in like that. And now we got to get the boots on. Okay, so now the throttle bodies are in place, the boots are on. Now you got to get the boots around that. You can actually reach through the front carefully, it's sharp, through the front, and work your finger around it to get them on there, and then clamp down. And you'll use the supplied hose clamps for those boots. Okay, so when you're doing this, put the boots on the throttle body first. Then it's easier to get the charge box on. Make sure you get your clamps on, or you'll regret it. Okay, now the charge charge box is in. Make sure you tighten all 6 of the throttle body and box joints. And now we can install the reeds and start working on some of the other stuff. Okay, so now with the reeds, there's a plastic collar. Has to go inside this so you can clamp the filter on. And then you'll install the filter and then install that into the box. Okay, now you got to pull the nose cone off of this, and there are some screws down here underneath the plastics. So just be careful, make sure the screws come out. Once the screws are out, it falls apart. So now I've got the nose cone. This will get attached to the sled. Okay, so there's some holes right there and there, there and there I drilled out. Okay, they're going to use these screws out of the hood. And make sure you get it in there snug fit, and then put the screws there, and then 2 on the bottom. Okay, so I forgot to put the ECU mount here. This was pretty close on this one, so I just rolled that edge. So if it, if it did touch, it shouldn't now. It's close, but it won't dig in. So it's just a rolled edge there. Okay, so don't follow those instructions. You got to put the mount on forward. I put it on backwards for some reason, but put it on forward, tighten it on there. This is how it sits. Okay, so got the ECU plate on right, got the ECU mounted, got the wires pulled up, tucked through, the idle air control valve attached right there with just 1 of the hood screws. The power valve wire, you got to clip the zip tie so it has enough room. Get it down in there to where everything feels like it should be good, and then make sure you reattach. This sled doesn't have that, it's an 18, so it doesn't have that loop. So we'll do something to make sure everything's secured and not going to get cut, wires damaged, none of this breaks. And then we put this crossbar back in as well, tighten down.
Little YouTubers. Help for all the other monetize that shit.